afternoon. Applied Digital Studies, Section 2. Sorry, didn't get my windows ready before I started talking. Give me a second here. Here we are. Okay, great. So, hello. Hope you're doing well. I hope you can hear me okay and see me decently or okay. Let me turn off the music. That probably improves the sound anyway. So good afternoon. So Applied Digital Studies Section 2, thank you for joining me today. Let me know if you're watching. I hope people are watching. Let's see. Don't see anything yet on Twitch, but say hi. If you don't mind saying hi in Twitch and Discord, that's always good to see who's out there. If anyone's out here, hey, there was somebody. Hey, Lillian. Thanks for saying hi. And yeah, looks like 8 viewers on Twitch. Should be a few more. Hello, hello. Yes, indeed. Good afternoon. It is a sunny and slightly warmer, but still chilly Wednesday afternoon. First day of back to campus, but we're not on campus. So I'm not. You might be, but I'm not. So hopefully that's okay. Oh, hey, I see you on Twitch. Do you prefer Ainsley? I guess I thought you prefer Mary, but anyway, good to see you, Ainsley. So yeah, something you may notice is that you are typing in, when you type in Discord now, if you're typing in Discord above me, you are blue. I have gone through and changed it so that you all are in sections, but that you have a role assigned to your section. So you all that are typing now are in section 2, and that's why you're blue. I might change the color scheme later, but I kind of like it the way it is, so I might not. It's really just to make it easy for me to reference you all. So if I, for example, if I type at section 2, then all of you will see that as a push notification. Similarly, you could do that for each other as well. Like you could say at section 2, where are we supposed to be today, or whatever you need to know, and hopefully you'll be able to figure that out. So the yeah, and I just saw a question in the general from Ryan. The streams are indeed saved, so you can view them later. Yeah, that's fine. But the advantage of watching live, of course, is you can pose questions. I'm going to pose some questions to you at some points in this, and if you have answers, you can supply them on here. So that's the real advantage of watching it live versus watching it later. But either one is acceptable. Also, if you're watching live, you can see the live, bird cam. If something happens that's exciting on the bird cam, nothing going on right now, as you can see, but it did in section 1, like an hour ago. The woodpecker showed up, and so we got to check out the downy woodpecker for a bit. That was really exciting. I was very pleased to see that. So I don't know if anything else has been coming by, but it's so windy today. I think the birds are all kind of hunkering down wherever they are. Although this feeder being somewhat sheltered, I hope is an attractive option for them if they're considering different places they can get some food. Got some good bird seed out here today, so actually I need to refill it. So I think if I put some fresh seed in there, that might even bring some more. But I've been really excited to see them coming in here. And lately, and I'm keeping my curtain closed, which is right here between, like, you can't see how I'm doing this, but that bird feeder that you see on that camera is like 10 feet away, but through a window, and I have a curtain drawn over here to keep the sun out. But like one time when I just kind of leaned to the side of the curtain to peer out there, all the birds flew away. So I think they can see me through a little, or they can see my shadow or something, and they freaked out. So I'm going to keep it closed. Obviously it's pretty sunny right now too, but anyway, let me know if you see anything. That would be fun to switch over there. Here's the plan for today, sort of. I mean, this is I wanted to spend some time in today's stream talking about a few things, explaining and demonstrating a few things, and that's why I thought a stream made sense instead of a Zoom conversation. But I do indeed plan on having a Zoom conversation on Friday, so be prepared to be part of that, joining the link. The link, as you know, is in Canvas, so it's right here if you go to the Zoom page, and yeah, there it is. So whenever we get, close to 250 on no, that says Wednesday. Oh, I need to make some for Friday. So yeah, I will do that. I'll do it later. But those will be in Canvas, and you click on them. You know how that works. And you join the meeting, and we'll talk to each other. I would like to hear a few things in terms of like how you're doing with things and how you do some of the things that I'm going to talk about today. So that'll be our plan for Friday, and probably streaming again next Monday. But you can always see what's going on if you go to the modules page. So click on modules, and then go to, yeah, that's okay. Emily, if you need to come and go, that's fine. But hopefully it works well enough. But here's so if you go to modules, on the left, or the navigation, then you should see the list of days kind of organized as a table of contents, and I kind of like that view of it. Then you can look at any specific day, like here's today. So I'm live streaming on Twitch. Here's what I hope you've already done, and then here's what we're trying to accomplish today. I'm trying to contextualize programming, both for this class, but just in general. And then I can talk a little bit about the homework and what I want you to do by Friday. Many of you have already done the code practice number 1, which is great. Many of you still need to do, and that's fine. I wanted to show you a couple of things if you're still working on it. So yeah, that's the basic plan for today, and we'll go through there. As always, if you have questions, then drop them in either chat, Twitch, or Discord, or either of those is fine if you have questions as I'm talking. All right, so let's actually start with the code practice number 1, if that's all right, because some of you are already working on that, or 12 of you have already submitted it, so that's good too. 12, I don't know if you're which section you're in, but let's see. So here's how you do this, and I talked about this in the video that I published on Monday, so you've seen this already a little bit, but I have a few more things to add. And if you haven't seen that yet, then here you go. This is it. So a couple things that I'd recommend you do first. So this is what I'm looking at right now is my copy of this notebook, the one I created. I can edit this because I created it, but you cannot. You can run the code, but you can't actually execute, or you can't actually edit the code or edit the text here, I don't think. Hopefully not. But so the first thing you should do is go to File and then save a copy in Drive. And it's going to take it a couple seconds to create this copy. By the way, if you don't already have the Colab app installed in your Google Drive account, that's okay. It should still work. Like you should just be able to click through and then you can start using it. But now this is the copy. You can see that because it says copy of. And what I would like for you to do, this is just a request, not a requirement, not a big deal if you forgot to do this or didn't occur to you to do it, didn't occur to you to do this yet. But if you don't mind, just put your name in the title of the document so that I can tell them apart, because I'm going to be looking at these and I might have 13 different tabs open with different notebooks, and it would be kind of nice for me to be able to visually see, like, oh, that's Zach's, or oh, that's Ainsley, or that's whoever else. So if you forgot, it's not a big deal, but just if you think of it, then that would save me a little bit of trouble. So thank you if you do that. Thank you in advance if you do that. You can also put your name somewhere in here if you feel like it. Okay, the other thing you should do is update the sharing settings so that I can have access to it. So here's how you can do this. You can go to the share settings here, and when it pops up, you can down here change to anyone with the link. And then that gives you this viewer. Anyone with the link can view, comment, or edit. I might want to comment on yours if you think of it, give me the commenting capability, but at least give me view access, and then hit the copy link and then submit that in Canvas. That would be great. People forget to do that. It's not a big deal because I can always ask for permission to access it, but it's just it adds more work for both of us. So if you don't mind, try to do this as you turn it in so that I don't have to chase you down and get permission to view your stuff. One way you might do this to kind of plan ahead is you can make a Drive folder that automatically has that permission. So everything in that folder has anyone with the link can access permission. And if you have it set that way, then you can just put all your Colab notebooks in that folder. And then whenever you send it to me, you don't have to remember whether or not you set the sharing on that particular document or not. So just a little tip, maybe that helps. And ultimately, like if I can't access it, I'll just ask for access. Like that's not a big deal. So it just takes more time sometimes. So please try to do that if you can. Okay, let's look at the actual practice here a little bit, so I can explain a little bit more about what's going on here. As you hopefully recall, this is an environment where we can write text and we can execute code. These are different kinds of cells in here, so I can read this, but then I can run this. And I'll go ahead and run this so that I can confirm that it's connected, and it'll create the runtime and all that. It takes it a few seconds the first time you execute something, and yeah, there we go. So it worked. These are things that, for the most part, are going to work fine if you just click on the play button and see what happens. But what I'm asking you to do in the instructions here is to change something about them and think about what that change is. And that's what we'll probably talk about on Friday. For example, I'm asking you here to print some other greeting, right? So in my code that I've written, it says hello world. That's not the only way to say hello. So can you think of some other way to say hello, or some other first thing that this computer should say now that it exists? This is a virtual computer, so it never existed until just now. And you might say it still doesn't exist except virtually. But its first thing it got to do here was to say hello world, but maybe there's something else that would be a better first thing. Like, what would that thing be? So see if you can think of something and change it to that, see if it works, and then I'll ask you what you changed it to on Friday. The thing about this hello world statement is that there's a lot going on here that's maybe a little subtle and maybe could be unpacked a little bit. It probably seems simple, hopefully it does, but you can learn a lot through this one little example here, and that's why it's a useful thing to do at the beginning of a lesson on programming. And if you've taken other classes or looked at things online about how to program, very often you will start with a hello world statement. It's a convention, which means that it's a thing that different people do for the same reason, and that reason is trying to make sure your computer works, make sure that you can tell it to do something and it does that thing, and you are both on the same page as far as instructions and output. And if you think about working with the computer and programming it as kind of a conversation, you are both interlocutors in that conversation, and it kind of makes sense to start off with a polite greeting. So you want to say hello world, or you want to say hello computer, and the computer says hello back to you, and you're both friends now and you're working together. That seems appropriate. But there's a lot of assumptions going on there and a lot of storytelling in there, and we could tell different stories. You could have it say something else. You could have it say something like goodbye, or something like aloha, and these all have different meanings and different cultural associations, different linguistic origins. But I'm not telling you which one. I'm asking you to come up with one, and that might be kind of hard, actually, right? Like, come up with something that you think no one else will think of, right? I mean, there's a lot going on here. So that's kind of the cultural layer to this, but there's also, of course, a programming syntactic layer to this here. You may find that if you make a change to this and you change the wrong character, you could actually cause this to stop working. Let me try that, and so you can see what kind of thing might happen. Right, so let's say I decide instead of hello world, I would like to say salutations. Now, I'm doing this wrong. Actually, I misspelled that anyway, but that doesn't matter. What matters is that if I try to run this code right now, something's going to happen that's going to tell me that I did it wrong. I can tell that even before running that because I know what is supposed to be here, but also I can see there's something unusual here visually. I've got an opening parentheses but no closing parentheses. Those always have to have partners, and so that's going to cause an error. But let's see what happens and see what the error actually says. It says EOL while scanning string literal. Kind of a technical explanation, but let's see what we would do to try to solve that problem. I think if you look at this, hopefully you will notice what's missing. In fact, it points to what it thinks the problem is, or it points where the problem started for it. And that's right at this point. And this is the point where if you look at it, yeah, there's something missing here. There should be another quotation mark at least. And so that looks better. Let's try that. Unexpected EOF while parsing. Interesting. Kind of a similar thing, but similarly technical explanation. But again, it points right to the place where the problem is. And if I notice that there's an opening parentheses, it makes sense to add the closing parentheses. Now we're back to correct syntax, and we've printed salutations. So the syntax is something that you learn as you learn a language. Each language has its own syntactical quirks, but ultimately there are a lot of similarities, and there are some general principles that are almost always true, that if you open a parentheses, you're going to need to close it at some point. And if you open quote mark here, you're going to need to close it at some point. You're enclosing things to make them work differently. And this word here, salutations, is from the computer's point of view just data. The Python inside of this computer that I'm using does not know what the word salutations means. It does not know what hello world means. It doesn't know what this means. All it knows about these is that they include these characters in this order, and it's this length. Like, there are some properties of this thing that the computer can tell, but it doesn't know what these things mean. It can't read. So it just thinks of this as data. And so what you understand as you work through this is, and what the concept that you're working with, which is more sophisticated than you might realize, is the separation between code on the one hand and data on the other hand. So here the word print is code because that's an instruction. It's saying to the computer, I want you to print something. And so that's an instruction that, yes, the computer does understand, and it knows what to do with that, hopefully. So that's where we're talking to the computer. But here, this is just where we send it something and it's going to send it back to us. That's what the meaning of the print is there. So data, in this case, I'm using this in Colab Notebook, and data is going to show up here in red. So if you see how it's got, the opening quote mark here, closing quote mark here, and that's all in red, a red font, red typeface. The parentheses are both in black, and the word print is kind of a greenish, goldish color. I'm not sure what color that's supposed to be. But those are different colors to tell me that the computer understands them differently. And as the programmer, I should also understand them differently. So that's what the syntax highlighting here does. Python doesn't actually do the syntax highlighting. That's what Colab is doing for me, this particular environment. If I were to write in some other environment, it's kind of annoying to pull it up. But if I were, I usually often write, if I'm writing something complicated, I'll usually use Sublime Text or maybe Notepad++ to write code. And those have different color schemas, but they always follow a pattern. And once you recognize what the pattern is, it's easy enough to figure it out. But that's so that's what we're doing. And this statement has all this kind of embedded in it, even though it's a very simple, or it was a very simple hello world statement. So do what you can with that. The others all have something else where I'm asking you to change something about it. And I hope you can figure that out as you go. I'm not going to go through each of these point by point, but because I hope I've explained them decently in the textual part here, but we'll talk about it Friday if you have questions. The one thing that I imagine you will have a question about is this last one, because I have left it hanging. I have not included the explanation here. What I'm interested in here is finding out how you approach solving this problem. And there are probably 2-3 different ways you might approach this problem. And the way I've presented it to you here is that there is an error. I've warned you here that there is going to be an error if you try to run it. So let's try it again just to get that same error message. It says it must be string, not int. Okay, so what does that mean, right? So we can see that the problem has to do with line 2, this second, or the first print statement, but the second line of code. That's where the problem is. So what is the problem and how do I fix it? That's what you have to figure out. And this is kind of a challenge, or it could be. There are 2 things that might occur to you. Looks like spam comment on Twitch. I don't know what that is, but anyway, the Stack Overflow is a website where people share ideas and help each other debug code. So that's what this is prompting us to do. You could do that. You could search Stack Overflow for this phrase type error must be string, not int. And this is a Stack Overflow search. This is a site search on Stack Overflow, right? So you can see different people getting that error. They might get that error for different reasons, and you might have to read a lot to understand kind of what they're trying to do with it, and you might find that it has nothing to do with what you're doing. That's always the case with Stack Overflow. Stack Overflow can be great, but you really kind of have to understand what people are saying there. You can't just copy and paste the first answer you see when someone answers a question. But that's part of learning to program, is learning how to use Stack Overflow, because just to be honest, like that's a lot of the time when you're programming, you're just trying to find the right solution on Stack Overflow. Most of the time, if you're trying to solve a problem in programming, someone has already solved it at some point, and so finding that solution is a lot of the work, and it is work. It's not just sort of Googling it and copying and pasting. It's actually, thinking through it and evaluating different things. Anyway, so that's one way you could do it. You can search out Stack Overflow. You could also ask for help. You could ask me for help. You could ask one of your colleagues for help. There is a tech support channel in our Discord. Perhaps someone has been discussing it there already, and perhaps they've already got an explanation of how to solve the problem. So perhaps you could look at that and see if that makes sense. If not, perhaps you could ask for clarification. So you have resources. Like, I'm not telling you how to solve the problem, but you're not on your own. Like, I'm not just leaving you to flounder here. It is there. There are solutions. See if you can find it, right? And that's what I want to talk about on Friday. Is like, how do you solve that problem? Like, how do you when you hit this brick wall, like, what do you do to move through it? And you can, and you will, and we'll learn from that, right? This is, we're growing by struggling sometimes, and that's true for other things in this class too. But do your best with that, and we'll talk about it Friday. Okay, and again, when you're done, turn it in, submit it through Canvas so I can see what you've come up with. You might want to add some notes here for yourself, by the way. I'm not grading anything, of course, but if you want to, I think it might be useful for you to kind of think about how you solved this problem and kind of describe to yourself what you did to solve this problem, because you might come across similar problems later on. It might be useful to come back to this and see what you did when you got stuck here. Just a thought, right? I mean, this is you're developing your own code practice, your own skills here, so kind of decide how to do that if that's useful to you. But I think it would be. Okay, so I'm seeing cardinals in the yard, but they haven't visited this feeder yet. The male cardinal does not usually visit the feeder. My feeder, but he's over there right now on the other one. So, yeah, keeping an eye on him. The female does. She spends time over here, but he just kind of hangs back. I don't know why. All right, so that's that. If you have any questions, let me know. I haven't seen anything in Discord, so hopefully everyone's doing all right. So let's take a look at some other things for today, if that's okay. So again, going to the module page, and this is kind of my table of contents. That's how I'm using here. I encourage you to do the same thing to find your way through it. So here we are. The things to look at before class included an essay from Nick Montfort, and it is the appendix to the book that I've assigned as the optional textbook for this class. I recommend it. I think it's a good book. It takes some patience, I would say, but I think it's a really interesting and novel way to teach programming, and I find it really closely aligned with the way I approach programming, so I think I like it a lot. I believe there's a copy in the library. I know there's a physical copy in our library. I don't know if there's an electronic copy that we have access to. There might even be an open access version of this textbook. If not, there are other ways you can get it. But that's it. Exploratory programming. So it is a textbook in how to do programming, how to do Python mostly, also another language called processing, and it is a guide. It's like how to do these things, but it's fairly philosophical even in that guide. And one of the things that Nick does in the appendix for this book is spend some time reflecting on that question of why would we do this? Why would someone do this? And that's a question that may or may not have occurred to you, right? One way that question may have occurred to you, or one version of that question might be, why are we doing programming in this class? Why is Applied Digital Studies a class where programming is here? Or why does the professor keep saying this is not really a programming class, but we keep doing programming, or we started off by doing programming, so why are we doing that if this is not a programming class? These are questions that may have occurred to you. So I think there are answers in Nick Montfort's essay. I think he gives us a lot of different and interesting ways to think about this. So I want to spend a little time looking at that essay and thinking through some answers. Ultimately, I want you to develop your own answer to that question. Like, what is programming to you? What do you want from it? How do you get to that thing that you want from it? That's what I hope you can work through on this class. But that, I think, will make sense in the context of that essay. Okay, so that's what we're doing. That's what I mean by contextualizing programming. After class, by the way, a couple things for you to look at to get a sense of Cathy O'Neill's argument from her book, Weapons of Math Destruction. That's math. M-A-T-H, math destruction. I don't have a lisp, I'm saying math, like as in mathematics. So take a look at that. And then take a look at, but first let's take a look at Nick Montfort's excerpt from his book, Exploratory Programming, and Douglas Rushkoff's Programmer Be Programmed. Now, to get to this, I would like to introduce you to something new, something that is a tool that I've just started really playing with today. And I'm going to invite you to join me in a document. What I mean by that is there is a tool that I have now activated in our Canvas course. It is a tool called Perusal, I think, or maybe it's Perusal, I don't know. You can get to it in the navigation of our course. Should be the last link in your navigation. I have more links than you, but it should be the last link you have access to after Zoom on the left side of the navigation for our Canvas course. So go all the way down to the bottom there, or you can see it like right there for me. I'm pointing to it. Mine will look a little different for you, but it's the same word, perusal. I don't know how you say it. But when you click on it, let me show you what happens. Actually, you'll see something different because the first time you click on it, it'll do something where it's like, do you want to create a perusal account? And then it's going to link your account to your Canvas account. Like, you don't have to make a new username or password or anything. It just sort of makes this, like, automatically creates a perusal account that's connected to your Canvas accounts, which is actually connected to your banner account. So there's all these things that should be happening automatically behind the scenes, but ultimately you should end up with an interface. It looks sort of like this, and this is Perusal. As you can see here, I'm in the course homepage, as they call it, for Applied Digital Studies. And really there's a whole lot in Perusal that ultimately does a lot of what Canvas already does, but I'm not going to use any of this stuff. Probably not. The main thing I want to use is the annotation system, which is what really is the key thing that Perusal adds. So let's take a look at this essay in Perusal. This is what it looks like. You go down to the library section, you can click on Montfort's Exploratory Programming, and you can join me in the document. In fact, let me close, I'm open in multiple tabs, so let me close it in that tab. So this is meant to be a social annotation tool, which means that we can all annotate it. Like I'm viewing this right now, it looks like a couple other people are. I invite you to join me here as well if you'd like. You can just watch me and look at this later for Perusal if you want. Really, this is just a I'm playing with this tool. I'm trying to see how it works. So you're welcome to join me or just kind of watch if you'd prefer. But the idea and the opportunity here is that we can work through this essay together. I can even see you on this essay. Like I can see that you are viewing it. So it looks like a couple of people are here, Ashley and Jean. So good to see you all on this document. Again, it's a social annotation document. So that means that I can leave comments and pose questions in the document, and then you can answer them, or you can ask your own questions in the document. You might remember using something called hypothesis. This is kind of like that, but it has a lot more, it has some more bells and whistles, and it does threaded conversations a little better, and also the whole question answer kind of thing. I kind of like it. It's a self-contained thing, and it's a real like ecosystem built around a document. So it's pretty interesting. I don't know if it's going to continue to be useful, but I want to try it for today at least. So that's what I've done on this document for Nick Montfort. So, I encourage you to try it out. I think it would be fun to try it out. So, please do. But this is how it works. Like I highlight something, and then you all would see my highlights, and you can click on them. The thing that I would say, oh yeah, good. So someone responded. That's great. Can I check that out somehow? Oh, I can. Oh, neat. I upvoted their comment. Interesting. I didn't know I could do that. So I highlighted this particular bullet statement because whenever you see an author in the opening section of something list things in bullet points, that usually means that they're going to be important for the rest of the document. And this is an essay, and I would say it's an appendix for a book, but it's really written as an essay. It's persuasive. Like Nick Montfort is trying to explain something and trying to get us to agree with him. So it's a persuasive document. It's a persuasive essay. And as he says here, in the following sections, I offer arguments that programming and these three things, 1, 2, 3. And so if we skim the rest of the document, you can see those 3 things. So it helps us think. That's a second level heading. It gives insight into cultural systems. That's the second bullet point. And it helps us build a better world, which is the third bullet point. Yeah, sometimes it does that where it scrolls back up to the top unexpectedly. So that was kind of weird. But that's something that I can't really control. Okay, so a couple of things I want to talk about here and sort of pose to you. But like the cool thing is I can pose these to you verbally, or I can show you where they are in the document, and you can just type your answer in the document, or you could type your answer, in Discord or Twitch. So this to me occurs to me as the central thesis. So the basic thing here, and the most important thing here. So let's talk about this a little bit. And there's a question that's raised in this, a question that's implied in this paragraph that I would appreciate your answer to. I'm interested in your answer to. So I've posed that question in perusal, and I'm going to say it to you now. Either place you feel like you're responding is fine. So he says here, he's talking about the case for programming education. So thinking about where programming education fits in our curriculum. He's talking a little bit about K-12, but I think any curriculum. He's also, like he wrote this initially for graduate students. So graduate students in the humanities. So people taking like an English PhD, working in an English PhD program, why would they want to program? Like that's that's kind of his initial audience for this book. So there's no assumptions here about level. But there is something here that he wants to distinguish his approach from. So whenever this author is saying, like, my book is over here, it's different than this other stuff, we want to make sure we understand which other stuff it's not. Like, we want to understand this stuff too. So he says here that the case for programming education would not be as strong if programming were merely instrumental. So there's an interesting claim here. So when he says here, if programming were merely instrumental, that means that he thinks programming is not merely instrumental. He thinks that to consider programming merely instrumental is a weakness and is incorrect. So what do you think he means by merely instrumental? And I've posed that question here in perusal. You're welcome to type an answer there if you have some thoughts. If you're in perusal, if you would rather type them in Twitch or Discord, that's fine too. But I am curious, what do you think he means by merely instrumental? Because that's really important. I think it's important for the rest of this essay that we really clarify that concept. So what do you think? I do want to hear your thoughts, or read your thoughts. So please answer that while I get a drink of water here, either Twitch or Discord or one of the others. bird that is. Is that a chickadee? I think that's a chickadee. It's colored like kind of like a woodpecker, but it's a lot smaller. Smaller even than the downy woodpecker, and it's not red, but like it's got the white. It's got the like a white front and then black and white in the back. But I don't think it's a woodpecker. It is pecking wood at the moment, but I don't think it's the same thing. I think it might be. I think it's a chickadee. Huh, cute. Okay, so it looks like someone's typing. That's good. I wonder if I can see you typing in real time on perusal, or if I need to click out and back in to that question. I guess not. I can't tell if anyone's typing on this one or not, but I have an answer in Discord. Let me see what Emily thinks. You can, but it's not so much like we can do anything. Like there's a should here. Like there's an agenda. There's an idea that we should do certain things with it and should not do other things. Like, and that's or we should not be limited to just certain things. Like we should open it up, right? So I think you're in the right direction there. But I want to think about kind of what is the merely instrumental. What does that look like if we had computer programming education that was merely instrumental? What would that be like? And then we can ask like, what would be wrong with that? But like, what is merely instrumental programming? So there's the female cardinal. Yeah, nobody's on the bird cam right now. All right, but are people on Twitch? Are you thinking about this, or you wanted me to just tell you what I think? I'll just tell you what I think. But this was not meant to be a rhetorical question. I do want you to actually think of an answer, but I'll tell you something just so we can move on, which is like programming is not just executing a series of steps to get something done, right? So it looks like, oh, good, somebody just posted on perusal, so thanks. But it's not just sort of like, here's the problem. Programming is a direct line to the solution to that problem. By just typing the right things, I can magically solve my problem. Just in a very basic sense, programming is never that. Programming is solving problems. Like it's trying to figure out like, what language do I need for this? Like what libraries do I need? Like how would I even think about how to organize the problem in a way that I could solve it? And that's really what programming is. It's not typing the right things into the computer so that it does something, but understanding what you want your computer to do in the first place. That's programming. So yeah, and I think that's essentially what somebody's saying there. I can't see who that is, but maybe Amelia. But that's, yeah, exactly. So it's not just you're typing the basic things. And I like strings and chords I don't know if you mean that as a metaphor, but I like that as a metaphor. It's not just that, is what he's saying. And it's never just that. And anyone who teaches it is never just telling you what buttons to push to make it happen. If they're really teaching, they're teaching you how to solve problems with computers, and computers can solve all kinds of problems, and they can solve problems that in ways that wouldn't occur to you if you didn't know how to do programming and what programming can do and what it can't do. There's a metaphor a little bit later down here where he talks about it's an extended quote from Douglas Engelbart, who's a pioneer of computing from the middle 20th century and kind of understanding how computers are used and why anyone would want to use a computer. He has this great metaphor, I think, about carpentry. And I don't know if you've ever done carpentry or had like a woodshop class or something like that, but that's very similar to learning how to do programming, I think, anyway. Because success... Sorry, I keep getting distracted by this bird. It's really interesting. The success in carpentry has a lot to do with understanding the problem you're trying to solve and then figuring out a series of steps that get you to that solution. And that can be really interesting. It's not just sort of like take a piece of wood and then take off all the parts that you don't need and then you've got what you do need. You often have to think through a series of steps and like jigs and clampings and like you kind of know your tools. You kind of have to know what you have and think about and know how to use them to think through the different steps you need to finally get to that shape. So it's never like one step produces that shape. It's never like you push the button and now you have a curtain rod bracket like I have over here. Like I had to make the other day before a class. Like I had 10 minutes and my curtain fell down. I had to make a new one and I ran out and made it really quickly. But it's because I knew kind of what I had and the pieces and how to, all the screws. Like I had to think through all that process. But I could do that because I knew my material. I knew the tools I had, and I knew what it needed to do ultimately. That's really what programming is. I was essentially programming this wood to hold up this curtain, an instrumental kind of task, but it still required creativity. Like I still had to come up with those steps. I could have Googled it, but like I also was able to just think through it because it was a pretty simple task. That's a kind of exploratory programming too. Like it's working your way towards that problem and solving it that way. So I think that's just a really trivial way in which programming is not just instrumental, but even though in this case it did introduce something that was instrumental in my ability to close this window. The idea is it can give you even different ways to think about the world around you and think about and explore different ideas. This is kind of related, I think. Let me show you an example, maybe. So I might have showed you this before, and I apologize if you've seen me talk about this before. I don't mean to go on about my own work, but I think this is a good example of what I'm trying to get at here in terms of how programming can help you see the world differently. This is a Twitter bot I made, and so this is a computer program that runs code and then tweets it. So actually, this is a really good example. So it's the kind of thing that I understand because I made it, but even if you didn't make it, like you didn't make this, I hope you can still understand it. And I think understanding it as the result of a computer process actually helps appreciate it. So this is a Twitter bot that generates poetry. It generates poetry in an imagist style, and that's why I call it auto-imagist. And it does this by, let's take a look at this one. This is actually a really good one. So it does this by taking two images, like two literal photographs. This is one called and this is one photo, and this is another photo. It runs these through Microsoft's artificial intelligence that is trying to caption images. So my code takes that image, sends it to Microsoft, and says, okay, what's a reasonable caption for this image? And my code sorts through different choices that Microsoft sends back, and it chooses what it thinks is a good one, but basically it just chooses the best or the most confident caption that Microsoft gives it. And it takes that one from that image, it does another image, gets the same best caption it can come up with, and then it sticks them together with a word, or maybe sometimes a phrase, but that word is either like or a preposition like beyond or above or something like that. So what we get is two images now, a man with his mouth open like a snow-covered bridge. And by adding that word like, I've created this simile here that juxtaposes these two images, the idea of a man with his mouth open, a snow-covered bridge, which actually could be considered like an open mouth. And so accidentally, it's created this association in our minds that we can explore with our ideas and kind of think about like, what would it be like to be near that bridge? In what ways is that man like a bridge? And like, what does a snow-covered bridge, is that a scary thing or, a comforting thing? Like, we could build all kinds of stories around that, but that's all possible because of the programming that I wrote here. But I thought all I'm doing is essentially using, I guess, the programming of the English language, which creates those possibilities like juxtaposition and comparison, and the programming capabilities of Microsoft's artificial intelligence image recognition software. So it's putting those things together that is programming. Like this is something that I programmed. Like this is something that I made happen because I was able to think through, like, it would be interesting if I took two images and stuck them together, but then how can I stick them together? And then that's how I kind of solved that problem. So I wrote a little bit of code for this, but mostly it was thinking through what I wanted it to do and then coming up with this idea that I think was really successful. I mean, I don't like to brag about my own work, but I really like this one. So anyway, this is the idea that it helps us think in new ways, as it says. This is the kind of new way of thinking that would not be possible without this code, without the Microsoft code that does that image recognition, and without my code that sticks those images together. Like that creates that new way of thinking now about how is a open mouth like a bridge. I don't know. I'm thinking of it now. It's pretty interesting. Okay, so other things we can do. Now there's a bit here that I think is probably, it gets a little wonky, but I think is probably something you have some interaction with. So this is, the claim here is that programming gives us insight into cultural systems. So cultural systems, like, what are those? Let's think about those a little bit. But let's look at an example that I think might clarify that. Here's a question here that he poses: how have tools such as Photoshop participated in and influenced our visual culture? I think this is a big one. I think this is one you can probably think of examples off the top of your head. Um, yeah, can you think of this is a question I've posed here in perusal, but you can answer it in Discord or Twitch as well if you feel like it. How has Photoshop and tools like it changed our ideas of what photos are and what photos mean? The idea that any image can be photoshopped now, does that change our relationship to photos? I think it does. So how do we understand this, right? If you think about like what is visual culture, if you think of a platform like Instagram is all about visual culture. How has Photoshop and the other tools, even the tools built into Instagram, like how do those, these are tools, these are software tools, these are programmed tools, how do they change what we perceive from these platforms and how we use these platforms to create an idea of ourselves? Can you think of any examples of photoshopping? So photoshopping is a verb now. Like we can say, oh, that's photoshopped, or I shopped that, or something like that. What does that mean? And I'm really posing this question again. So what does it mean that we can Photoshop everything? And can you think of examples of things that were of photoshopping making a difference, basically? It looks like Emily's typing in Discord. But of course, anyone else can answer this too. Like, if you think of, can you think of examples where photoshopping got someone in trouble, or someone created a different impression of themselves because of Photoshop, or someone claimed that something that was actually recorded didn't really happen because it could have been photoshopped? I think these are all cultural implications of Photoshop. Like, the fact that Photoshop exists means that any image we see could be manipulated. So how have we evolved our use of media and our use of images in light of that possibility that images can be photoshopped? Is it possible to experience or view an image that has not been digitally manipulated in some way? Is there any such thing? These are questions, right? These are the questions we can run with. Emily's still typing, so that's great. Okay, so somebody's pointed out, Photoshop can, well, how? I mean, how does Photoshop, I mean, I see what you're saying, I think, but whoever's posted that comment on the perusal, like, how does it, it's not like, oh, that business uses Photoshop, I'm going to go there. Like, what do they do with Photoshop? How do they control a conversation with Photoshop? Like, how do they, what do they want us to know about them that Photoshop helps them tell us? Yeah, sure. So, Emily, I think you put this well, that it makes it hard for us to believe images we see on the internet, almost like certain ones are too good to be true. Yeah, and you don't even have to put those in scare quotes. I think that's literally the case, that we see an image on the internet and we often want to know if this is true or not, or we always kind of have in the back of our mind that if we see something that seems unbelievable or super weird, then we might say to ourselves that could be photoshopped. I don't know, there's one, it's not a photo, but it is video, but you could probably you could have the same conversation about video, but you've probably seen hopefully you've seen it because this is in all of the news, but like Myanmar is going through a coup right now, and the military has taken over the country, and it's a big deal, but there's this like image that's sort of become a meme now, or video of a woman doing aerobics, and I guess leading an exercise class or something, and then while behind her the military trucks are rolling in to arrest the parliament. Pretty crazy and pretty weird, and it's like, how could this possibly have actually happened? But it did, I think. I mean, I don't think there's any evidence that it was faked, but it's the kind of thing when you see it, it's like, is that really possible? Like, what the heck's going on here? Yeah. Right, so I think, Lillian has a good question. And actually, Emily has a good practical question. But Lillian's question is like, is it possible that they're not photoshopped or edited? I think, well, it depends on how you define it, but you're correct to imply that there are different degrees of this, right? Like, certainly touch up a photo, and you would choose to not share photos that were not touched up. But just the fact that I'm using a digital camera, and this camera has automatically adjusted several things about the settings that I have no idea about, like aperture and white balance and stuff like that. It's already digitally manipulated as soon as it's stored on this digital computer of my phone. So that's in a technical sense, or a literal phenomenological sense. There's no such thing as a non-digital image anymore. But chemical photography would be the only exception. Like if you have literal like film in your camera and you're taking it that way, and then you send it off to be developed, or you do it in a dark room, that would be analog photography. But everything is digital now, so it's always already manipulated a little bit by the algorithms in this phone that take in the light and do other things to figure out what the right settings are for those things. But you're right, certainly, that there are ways in which we choose to do those or don't do those. And Emily's asked the question, can you reverse the Photoshop? I'm not sure what you mean, but I think probably not. I mean, you could sort of undo what they've done, but you would really just be doing something new to the photo that tries to restore whatever you think it was supposed to be, right? So if we're talking about photo editing, like in Photoshop, Photoshop is a bitmap editor, and so when you manipulate an image and then you export it from Photoshop, it's a bitmap, which means it's like it doesn't remember the edits, basically. So there's no history of all the different things that someone did to it that you can just Control Z or undo, if that makes sense. If that's what you're asking about, you definitely cannot with a bitmap editor. For some vector editors, you can rewind steps if you know which steps there were. Like they would be stored as discrete transformations that could be isolated for like a vector editor. But I don't know if that's always the case or even very common, but technically it's possible. But a bitmap is essentially just sort of flattened into a single canvas of pixels. And so once you've flattened it, that's it. I mean, you can't undo that other than doing something new on top of it that you wanted to do to restore it. But yeah, I mean, there are forensics. There are some tools that people who really know how to look at it can do to find out if an image has been manipulated. But even those are just kind of best guesses, and it has to do with looking at different compression levels on different parts of the image, which is evidence of manipulation, or that an image has been opened and saved in different stages, basically. So there are some things you can do to look at how the history of a photoshopped image, but you can't usually undo it. Yeah, good. So somebody in the chat is bringing up the Web Literacy for Student Fact Checkers book, which is great. Mike Caulfield's book. We also covered in my DGSD 101, which some of you may recall. But yeah, that's the book that talks a lot about images in Photoshop. And also you make a great point that it's not just sort of belief or disbelief, but how are your emotions being manipulated by this image? That's what we're trying to do. That's what someone's usually trying to do with photoshopping, is to try to change your opinions. Yeah, good point. So Lillian is pointing out that face retouching is a thing that automatically happens. Zoom has it. Like Zoom, you can retouch your image, your appearance in Zoom. So yeah, you can't really get away from it. But understanding like what they're actually doing and how to program something like that helps us understand what we're seeing whenever we look at it. Like knowing that those options exist is one thing, and like when we see an image, we can know that maybe it's been manipulated in these ways. But also like knowing how to do it ourselves, or how to program it ourselves, or knowing what kinds of things it's doing to the image. Like how does it sort of like blemish removers, right? Or freckle removers or something like that. They probably take an area of the image and they take a general average pixel value, and then they notice that there's one subregion that's proportionally out of whack with that average, and so let's set that to be more like the average. You do things like that, and that's the kind of thing that like helps you understand what they're doing, and helps you maybe make a better one in the future, or at least understand like what's been changed about an image when you see it. When you see a final like published image from a celebrity or an influencer, like you can pretty well take for granted that it's been manipulated, but knowing what manipulations are possible and what they're doing even at a programming level, I would argue, helps you be more critical of them. Not saying we have to be cynical about it and just assume everything is fake, but I think just understanding that when things are trying to manipulate our emotions, there's a pretty good chance that they are following certain kinds of procedures that are possible because of programming. Okay, so there's a lot going on here, and I think we're actually out of time, so I don't have much more time to unpack any of these other ideas, but this was an interesting discussion. I think, I obviously was doing all the talking, but good ideas in the perusal thing. If we do use perusal again, I think I would just send you an announcement and then link you to it. I'm not going to do like, it has things in here called assignments, and it will actually, it says it can actually like grade your comments itself, which I don't trust, first of all, but second of all, I'm kind of curious how that's programmed. So this is the kind of thing where some knowledge of programming helps you think through like what actually could they be doing when they say they're going to grade your comments. So I could look at that in a couple ways. Are they going to count your words, and then the more words, the better? Are they going to like see if the kinds of words you're using are like the kinds of words I'm using when I write the question? I'm really interested to see how that works. And so that's the kind of thing that I can start forming my opinions about based on how I would approach writing code that would do that. And then I can see if I have a chance to see how they do it, I might see if I can confirm my theory or not. I assume it's not open source. In other words, I probably can't look at the source code for how that's determined. So all I would have is my intuition and my knowledge of how I would have programmed it. And that helps me have a basis for critiquing it, which that's my instinct is to critique that. My instinct is to say, I don't want a computer grading things, but I'd kind of like to see how what they mean by that and how they've implemented that. So I'm curious. But again, that's the kind of things that a bit of programming knowledge can help you explore about the world, including the systems that we use. And perusal is just this system that I introduced today, but we live through live with so many other systems like Canvas and Twitch and Zoom and Discord, and the education system is another kind of system that we're all living and working with. So it's something that we actually know a lot about systems in general, but our goal here is to try to understand what we can do with them and how we can use them. Okay, so I should wrap it up, but thanks for watching. This is obviously being recorded, so perhaps you're watching it later. If you're watching it later, actually, those perusal comments might be a good place for you to leave your ideas because it works asynchronously just as well as synchronously. So feel free to jump in on that. I think it will like send me a notification when you leave a comment. So we'll see how it goes. All right, so Friday's going to be a Zoom, and what is that? Is that a bluebird? I saw some bluebirds here yesterday, and I'm hoping they come back. But eastern bluebirds are really striking this time of year. They're super blue. Oh no, that's a what is that? I know what that is, but I can't think of the name. I can hear it. Maybe you can hear it on the mic too. Anyway, birds are interesting. I'll switch it on the bird cam just in case they stop by the feeder. Unless there's no one there now, are they? Okay. Well, I'll switch off my mic and switch on the bird cam for a few minutes if you want to watch, just in case something happens to come by. But anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you're doing well. Have a good afternoon, and I will see you all on Zoom on Friday. So, see you later.